Welcome to Excel Radio with Dr. Nick Zyrowski, where we talk with world-class entrepreneurs, executives, and health experts who have unlocked the secrets to excel health and performance.
Hi, and welcome to Excel Radio. This is your host and high-performance expert, Dr. Nick Zyrowski. In this episode, I'm going to be speaking with Brendan Ridings. Brendan Ridings and I are going to be discussing topics such as posture destroying your health, the secrets to aging gracefully, and how meditation can set you up for a day with much more success. Brendan brings a lot of knowledge to the table, and I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you, and welcome to the show, Brendan.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on the new Vision Excel podcast, and hopefully I can share some really great information with your listenership about being an entrepreneur and the health strategies involved to bring you to optimal performance and help anybody who frankly is listening to perform at their best every day.
Hey, I have no doubt that you're going to deliver an incredible amount of value. So let's go ahead and start with this, is that, you talk about the American lifestyle causing a lot of health crises in many people's life. Can you elaborate on the lifestyle that Americans live and some of the issues that are coming out of that?
Absolutely. So there's many facets to this question. So I'll start to break them down kind of by category. Now, first, we call it the standard American diet, and the acronym is SAD, which it really is SAD. So our diet is primarily based around, it's heavy in meats and trans fats, refined foods. We've really gotten away from eating clean, natural foods, and we're finding so many health issues. I mean, the top killers in the United States, heart disease, stroke, diabetic related conditions, are all directly a part of this. So, for instance, we're finding in the medical community that inflammation, chronic inflammation, is actually the cause of most problems and disease states, not necessarily a response to those disease states. For instance, you're eating some type of food, refined carbohydrate. It has a high glycemic index, meaning it digests very rapidly, and it causes a spike in your blood sugar, and you get a very strong insulin response from that. So high blood sugar has an inflammatory effect within the body. It's almost, you could describe it as acidic. So let's say you're eating sugary foods throughout the day, and you're constantly elevating blood sugar. So you're increasing that blood sugar throughout the day, and it's creating this inflammatory response within the blood vessels, within the circulatory system. And this chronic inflammation leads to these blood vessels hardening. And some people may know this or may not. The blood vessels assist in the circulation along with the heart. So if they lose that elasticity and that ability to contract and expand, you're going to make the heart work harder. You're going to make the whole system not function efficiently. So just this chronic inflammation from eating, like we said, the refined foods, the high sugar foods, actually being reversed in our omega fatty acid intake. The typical American takes in more omega 6s and omega 9s, and lacks in omega 3s, which are found in plant-based foods like walnuts or in fish, fatty fish. So omega 3s are very anti-inflammatory, where omega 6 fatty acids, which are present in steak, for instance, are highly inflammatory. So we're seeing that this chronic intake of these poor food choices are actually leading to inflammation throughout the body, and this destructive inflammation is leading to disease states. Not that it was previously thought the disease states were creating this inflammatory response. So we have to look at the standard American diet, and there's lots of information of better ways to do this, but the biggest thing is to start reducing those refined foods, those boxed foods, those canned foods, and start going for the fresh, natural stuff. I'm sure everyone's heard it time and time again, but this is a really concrete reason to do so. When you go to the grocery store, shop around the exterior of the grocery store, not within the aisles, because in the exterior is where you're going to find the fruits, the vegetables, the fresh, lean meats, things like that are going to be much better for you in the long run not just your body composition, but also in fighting these chronic conditions and these top killers. In addition to that, we have to look at activity. Now, there's an interesting study that came out of the National Academy of Sports Medicine based in Arizona. They studied populations from Mexico versus the United States in lower back pain. And it was found that in Mexico, people experienced 90% less lower back pain of the polled populations. And this is due to our technology here in the United States has made us do much less movement. We're much more sedentary. We sit in a car to drive to our work. We sit at a desk and type on a computer. And then when at the end of that long, stressful day, quote unquote, we sit down on a couch and watch television. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you look at some of these people overseas or say in Mexico, they are moving. They are walking or riding a bicycle to work. They're working more labor, things like that. So they're finding not only less pain, but also obviously the United States is experiencing an obesity epidemic, which is a risk factor for almost every disease type, including heart disease, stroke, diabetes, even chronic wounds, which kill more people than breast cancer. So it becomes a movement issue as well. And there's two prongs to this. Lack of movement obviously deteriorates the body. It reduces health. It increases body fat, which is a risk factor for all disease states. And when you sit, current information, and I'm citing a study that Dr. Kelly Starrett from Mobility WODs cites, is that sitting is now being linked more to have a more of effect on mortality than smoking. For instance, sitting for 1 hour reduces life expectancy about 21 minutes compared to smoking one cigarette, which reduces life expectancy about 11 minutes. Now, sitting, why is this so bad? So when you sit, you change the fundamental function of the human body in various ways. And the first thing you do is completely shut down the glutes or your butt. And then you're also stimulating the front of the leg, those hip flexor muscles. So you start to change the biomechanics of the hips, which changes their position. You start to mess with the low back. You start to mess with the knees because now the pelvis is out of alignment. The spine becomes out of alignment. The next thing that happens is you lose the ability to activate and breathe out of the diaphragm, out of the lower lobe of the lung. Now, you might not be noticing this, but pay attention right now while you're sitting listening to this podcast. Chances are you're in your car traveling home or to work, or maybe you're just relaxing by your computer listening to this. Pay attention to where you're breathing. Are you breathing more out of your chest, or are you breathing more out of your stomach? Does it feel lower? Because when you sit, you deactivate that lower lobe and you start to breathe out of the upper lobe. Now, why this is problematic? When you breathe out of the upper lobe of the lung, that actually initiates the fight or flight response within the human body, which stimulates cortisol and adrenaline, your stress hormones. So it gives a perceived state of stress that doesn't exist. And we all know chronic stress is terrible for you. And it also can change how your mind is functioning. So there's this, all these problems coming together of poor diet, lack of movement, sitting, that are all wrapping into one to create these terrible conditions we're experiencing. And the final note on that, sitting in a hunched position can actually increase cortisol 30% and decrease testosterone about the same, because there was a study done by psychologist Amy Cuddy out of Harvard that showed standing with a powerful, confident posture in 2 minutes can increase testosterone while decreasing cortisol, and the opposite is true by sitting in a hunched over, arms crossed, unconfident looking position. You're going to raise stress hormones and lower those confidence hormones. So that also has a negative effect on your health and well-being. So all in all, it's these activities we're performing on a daily basis that we don't think of as that bad or pay much attention to that are really at the root cause of all of our top killers. I mean, we have the most advanced medical science here in the United States, yet we're suffering. Cancer rates have gone up, heart disease has gone up, stroke has gone up. Why is this? It's the medical profession isn't. They're doing their job. We're not doing our own job to take care of ourselves.
Right. So that's all it's very interesting. I got a million questions off of everything you just said. So, first thing is that, the when people are sitting, right, there's no way around the job that people have that requires them to sit at a computer all day. I mean, that's how people make a living. They feed their families that way. What are some of the things that people can do in order to actually change the way that they're sitting at their desk, or whether it's standing, or if it's sitting there with a better posture? Like, what do people do? Is it get up every 15 minutes? Like, what are your suggestions?
So I'll give you some strategies, starting from the most simplistic all the way to obviously the largest behavior change, so that somebody can take that first step. The first rule of thumb is, for every 30 minutes spent sitting, you want to walk for at least 2 minutes to get circulation going, to reactivate those glutes that have been sitting there dormant, to be restorative to posture. And one little tip or trick that I would recommend is, once you've been sitting for 30 minutes, if you can just remind yourself to stand up and walk around for 2 minutes. When you stand up, take a moment, and this will sound a little goofy, but it works extremely well. Squeeze your butt muscles. Squeeze them, tighten them, and tense your abdominal muscles as best as you can, so that you start to bring that pelvis back into proper alignment. You bring that rib cage back down. Your body's in good spinal alignment. You start to reset that position back to where it should be, because sitting absolutely distorts how your spinal alignment is. Actually, most low back injuries, people feel them while being active, but the cause is because they've been sitting and they've tightened the front of that hip up, which attaches to that lumbar spine. The next thing that I would recommend doing is start to look at the arrangement of your desk. I'm fortunate enough to have a sit-to-stand desk. I can move up and down. But let's say you have a regular sitting desk. In the past, at other places, I've put a box or something underneath my computer to lift it up, or so that I can be at a standing position. If that's not available to you, check out the height of your monitor. Make sure that your head is not tilted down, that you're not looking forward and down, but rather lift the monitor up so that your head is in a more straight forward looking position that puts your cervical spine or your neck in a nice neutral position. Make sure that your keyboard is as close to the edge of the desk as possible, and get your chair as close as possible, so that you don't have to hunch over your keyboard to reach it. You don't have to reach too far forward and ultimately round those shoulders and sink over into that hunchback look. You can sit up straighter, be in a better position, and maintain your lower lobe lung breathing, and ultimately keep the upper body in better alignment. You can take it a step further, and there's some wonderful posture support devices out there that are going to help teach you the how to sit better, and sit with better posture, so you don't have to think about it so much. I mean, it goes from, there's devices that give you a reminder. They're literally a wearable that you put on your body, and it'll beep when you go into poor posture. If you're not the type of person that knows what good posture feels like, there are other devices that you simply sit against, and the way that they're shaped kind of guides you into that good posture. So it's a small investment, but I think it pays large dividends in the long run.
And you actually have some type of device that you have created. Is it a device or a system? What is it?
So what I've actually created, and this was in response to seeing so many people, they would come to me with shoulder injuries, neck pain, tension in their shoulders, that they would they would say, "This is where I carry my stress, Brendan." And I'd say, "Unfortunately, we're not stress camels. We don't have a storage area for that stuff. You are chronically in a bad position that caused that muscle to tighten up. And when you get stressed out, you feel it, because your nervous system gets stimulated by your stress hormones, which kind of activates that muscle, and it tightens up even further when you're stressed out." Mm-hmm. So in response to that, I spend an hour working with these people to reset their posture, to get their neck to relax and their shoulders to feel a little bit better, and reduce some of their pain and aches between their shoulder blades. But then they'd come back the next day looking just as bad as the first day they walked in. And I said, "What did you do?" And well, Brendan, I sit at a desk all day, and I drive in a car, and so I designed a product, and it's called Posture PT, and this stands for Posture Personal Trainer. And it's very simple. If you look at most chairs, look at the back of the chair. First of all, it's kind of too far away from you. no one sits against the back of their chair anymore. They sit kind of forward in their chair in order to reach their keyboard. So I made it a certain depth or thickness to push you forward in your chair so you could actually sit against the back of your chair while working. The second thing that we took into respect when we were designing this product was a lot of chairs, especially your car, if you look at it, it's described as a bucket seat, but the basic shape of that is called concave, right? So it's shaped, it's concave, it's bent inward, and it kind of
I've found that the car seats are typically anymore, they're awful. I mean, even in most of the newer cars, the headrest actually like pushes your head forward, and it's just I don't know who can possibly sit like that. Maybe the average person does. See, I'm very I watch my posture very well, and so when I sit in my vehicle and the headrest is actually like pushing my head back, like I can't even actually sit back in my seat and rest my head.
It's horribly detrimental. If you sit all the way back in your car seat, you have a bucket seat which promotes the rounding of your shoulders forward. It pushes your head forward.
Yep.
Now, I get cradling you for a high-performance vehicle, but none of us are flying around in our cars taking sharp turns. It's just completely unnecessary. Mm-hmm. So, actually, that's what inspired this. I was driving down to Tennessee, and I was on my way I used to compete in powerlifting. I was on my way to a competition, and I kept sitting forward, but at the same time trying to pull my shoulder blades back and sit with really great posture. And after 2 or 3 minutes, you kind of lose the cognition of that. You're not paying attention anymore, and you slouch without even realizing it. And I just looked at the seat, and I'm like, man, what if this seat was convex instead of concave? So the exact opposite shape. So what I did was took a foam roller. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it's a 6-inch diameter foam roller for your legs and whatnot to loosen them up. And I cut it in half lengthwise and stuck it behind my back. And it was perfect. When I sat against it, my shoulder blades rounded around it, so they went back. And when your shoulder blades get pulled back, you'll notice your head also retracts back to a neutral position. So I felt really good, and I could maintain it without thinking about it, which is exactly what I needed. So I actually started making them for my clients at the time who needed help just by hand, and later on was approached, and we turned this into a product because if, at least half of the people I was working with needed this, more people were going to need it. So essentially the design is it's about 21 inches tall, about 6 inches in diameter, and it's shaped in a convex shape. So when you sit against it, your shoulder blades round around it, and it attaches to your car seat, your chair at work, or some people even use it in their couch. For more information or pictures or even videos, you can check out confidentposture.com and see exactly how Posture PT works. But that was what I created that I felt could really help this situation that I saw so often.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. I'm not 100% familiar with it. But it sounds like it's what is needed for a lot of people. I mean, I've used like lumbar rolls and other things like that. But yeah, when you were talking about actually bringing those shoulders back, it makes a lot of sense with what you did, how you actually started by cutting the foam roller in half and getting those shoulders back. And like you said, I know just from experience, the seats in the cars, they're terrible, and you need something in there especially if you drive a lot. Because I have patients who, they're working on their posture, but let's say, if they're a salesperson and they're just spending a ton of time in their car, it's like we can work on them to the end of the day. And if what they're doing on a daily basis is just driving that problem, then it's hard to help them really. So.
Yeah, an hour a day of you fixing them doesn't repair that many hours they spend sitting in poor position.
Yeah, so it's something like that is very necessary. So I'm going to have to look into that a little bit further. I got a question for you based on what you had said earlier. Jumping way back to the beginning when we first started talking, and you're talking about diets a lot and how the it's our poor lifestyle, our poor diet that's causing so many issues. Now, what kind of diet do you suggest? Because there's tons of diets out there. What kind of diet are you suggesting and seeing work well with people?
So what I suggest, I don't give a particular diet prescription necessarily. What I say is, I just try to give some recommendations so that people start seeing the small changes that occur from this. So what I'll typically tell somebody when they approach me is I'll say, all right, listen, the first thing I want you to try to do is replace anything that you eat out of a box. Let's just go for the fresh foods first. I don't try to overwhelm them with weighing the food or portions at first. Just get those better choices and eliminate 3 particular food groups. Dairy, take out your wheat-based or gluten-based foods, and take out legumes or beans, because those are typically the ones that create more dietary problems than other groups of foods. And then what we do, I say reintroduce one at a time. Reintroduce each of those groups one at a time, because I'm not going to be one of those people that says, oh, you can't eat wheat because there's too much of this gluten intolerance misunderstanding out there, or that dairy is definitely bad for you. I mean, obviously there's a lot of information to show us that dairy is not optimal for human beings. But once again, I believe that the individual needs to explore this a bit. And then we take all 3 of those groups out, reintroduce one, see how your body reacts, and then eliminate it, reintroduce the other one, see how the body reacts, and do this experimentation just a week of each one. And you'll start to see really what foods affect you and significantly. And I'll give you an example. I personally went onto a strict paleo diet. I was already familiar with portioning my food, and so I just used that as my food choices. And I eliminated, obviously, wheat and dairy and legumes, but I reintroduced dairy at one point, and immediately, as soon as I ate one yogurt, I was lethargic. That night, I slept an extra hour or two. I just was bogged down. I immediately found out that dairy was something I could no longer put in my system, but I was unaware that it was causing problems until I removed it.
Right, exactly. One of the things I do with people is I run some specific lab testing in order to look for sensitivities. And so when we find those sensitivities or those foods that their body just doesn't agree with based on their DNA and their particular health, I have them remove it. And this is the same thing. It could be people getting headaches or skin irritations or, like you said, chronic fatigue or they find that their gut just is not feeling well all the time. And so many people, they just live, and that's just what they think life is. Like, that's the way you're supposed to feel, and that's the way it is. But, in fact, once we remove those foods, just like you're talking about doing, it's one of those things that people really, they feel different, and they realize that, they're not supposed to walk around feeling bloated all the time or whatever the case is. So, the method that you're using to do it is as good as any if there's particular foods that you think you should already be looking to pulling out of your diet, because for one, it'll save you a couple bucks, but 2, there are things like you mentioned, like dairy and wheat, and just the major things that people are sensitive to.
Absolutely. That's a great starting point. And then you start to get an idea of the functioning of your body. And a lot of people, when I first say this to them, like, well, Brendan, I really love cheese and I love this and I love that. And I said, I understand that, but just wait until you see how good you can feel. And in my own experience, by dropping these particular foods that I was particularly sensitive to, I reduced my sleep quota to about 5.5 or 6 hours a night. Alarm isn't required to wake up. I wake up energized after 5.5 to 6 hours, feeling great. And for me, that's a huge benefit. I don't think there's one person out there that wouldn't love to sleep 5.5, 6 hours and feel great all day long. Life kind of necessitates that at this point in time. So there's these huge benefits. And the other thing that people don't understand is food is hugely influential of neurochemistry. So you may put something in your mouth that's pleasing to your taste buds, but as soon as it goes down your throat, it is no longer advantageous or beneficial for you. Mm-hmm. So your only benefit is the tongue. The rest of the body suffers for it.
Yeah,
and
I
try to teach people, I say, listen, by eating the right foods, you are going to have a more optimal neurochemistry. And literally, this is what's responsible for your feelings of joy, well-being, and motivation, is how balanced that neurochemistry is. And I give people this example all the time. I say, Have you ever been in a blah mood and you drank a big old cup of coffee and then you felt pretty good afterward? All you did was stimulate a bunch of dopamine. And dopamine is the body's, reward chemical. It tells you you've done something good. It produces feelings of motivation and joy, and so you just tweaked your neurochemistry. Well, now if you do these good habits, if you're eating good foods, your body will optimize that neurochemistry, and you're going to have an overall better function, better outlook. Your whole outlook is pretty much determined on your what your neurochemistry is like, and that's in your hands. It's controllable through habits like meditation, exercise. It's controllable through dietary practices, so you can optimize it and feel amazing for no particular reason.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. When you think of food, I really think that so many people just their emotions or their or maybe it's just whatever's next to them, they just grab it and they eat that way. And I think it's strongly driven on like what they feel is good, or what makes them feel good or feel happy. But you really have to think about food as it's fuel to your system. It's what you're literally putting in your body for your body to create new cells and nourish itself. So you have to get past the like, oh well, I think donuts make me feel good, but you have to really think about what your body needs and feed yourself according to the needs that you have. And whether it's a certain vitamins and nutrients that you need, you really need to feed yourself according to that versus just what you think is good at the time or what's easy.
Absolutely. And for those people facing that struggle of going, well, when I eat this donut, I feel really good. The really good that you experience off of those types of foods is extremely temporary. We do know that high sugar, high fat foods stimulate the same centers of the brain as a dose of cocaine. We know that it's addictive in that property. We know that it's very temporary and fleeting, those good feelings. But people seek out those quick fixes often for these if they're not feeling so good, they'll reach for that donut, and very temporarily they feel better. They're enjoying themselves. They're having a pleasurable experience. But my challenge to them is, what if you could make your baseline feeling that way all the time? Mm-hmm. And what they don't realize is that doing these good habits can stimulate, like for instance, exercise and meditation are the only two proven methods that can cause the release of dopamine and simultaneously open the receptors that dopamine act upon. Mm-hmm. So foods can't do this, drugs can't do this. That's why when you start drinking coffee, you have to drink more and more just to feel the same way. People are putting down a pot a day, and they're just dehydrating their body and leaching it of water-soluble vitamins, all to try to achieve why do we drink coffee? Why do we drink regular coffee instead of decaf? Oh, well, we get that caffeine buzz. We get that dopamine release. Well, with the right nutritional habits, with exercise, and like I said before, meditation, they have proven that it will release dopamine and open the receptors. So your body becomes more sensitive to its own dopamine. You feel those good feelings, and you don't have to put any of the garbage in. Our bodies are set up to do this. It's just we're trying to find a quick, easy route to do it rather than just taking a little bit of discipline. And if you do these habits for 1 week, you'll start to see the benefit. It doesn't take long.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. So go ahead and give that a try and see how it changes your body. I think that you're going to find that it's incredible how well you can actually feel and the energy that you can have, and how many health concerns and conditions that you might think that you have to live with that just disappear. That's another big thing, is that these things might just disappear, and you're wondering like, how could I have not done this earlier? It's just such an easy fix. So, Brendan, the next thing I want to jump into with you is aging, how to age gracefully. Because one of the things you also talk about is that, so many people face a lot of health issues as they age. And many people just think that's part of aging. I mean, they're in their 50s and they can, they can barely run, they barely have any energy, they're starting to gain weight, and they're starting to develop all these chronic conditions, and one after another, then comes one medication after another. What do you say to these people who just think that aging and experiencing more and more health issues is pretty much just part of the way of that life works?
So, unfortunately, this has come as influence through the medical community, that a lot of physicians push this idea. Not all. I won't blanket them and say that they all say this, but it does unfortunately come from them. There was a funny joke I heard one time where an older man, he's 75 years old, went into the doctor because his shoulder hurt and was asking the doctor, "Oh, what's wrong? What can I do about it?" And the doctor says, "Well, you are 75." And the guy looks at him and says, "Well, my other shoulder doesn't hurt, and that shoulder's 75 years old, so that can't really be the answer." So, people just assume that the body deteriorates, that it falls apart with time. I've heard people in their 30s and 40s be like, "Oh, I'm just getting older." This is not the case whatsoever. Just to cite, once again, Dr. Kelly Starrett, he cites that the human body, the skeletal system and joints and ligaments and all that will sustain themselves for 110 years under normal to even athletic use if aligned properly, if the body is all in proper alignment and proper care is taken of it. What people fail to take into consideration is that it's not age, it's the amount of time that they have done abusive activities to their body, including poor nutrition, lack of exercise, lack of understanding how much their posture affects them, and not taking care of these things, So it's just an inevitable consequence. It's actually happening faster and faster. I'm sure you hear about younger and younger populations coming to you complaining of things that were never present in these young populations, like low back pain, stiffness or pain in joints, things like that. And we see child onset diabetes happening. It used to be adult onset. Type 2 are happening to children. So we can see that it's not age related. It's lifestyle related. It absolutely is. It just catches up. And I'm actually I'm producing an ebook, and it's essentially an online training guide for people to correct all their chronic pain and posture. And my demo model is a 73-year-old woman who had 2 torn rotator cuffs that by simply learning the alignment of her upper body and training accordingly healed. No surgery, no physical therapy, because the body got back into alignment. And she can move better than most people in their 50s because of maintaining these types of things. So my big message to people is age is not a reason. It's not a reason to give up and say, "Oh, well, I'm just this age, so I have to accept the fact that my knee hurts, or it's inevitable that I'm going to have to get this surgery." That is, surgery makes a lot of money, but the proactive solutions do not. So, of course, answers are going to go that direction. But take the time to learn a little bit about these subjects, and you can reduce and remove all pain. And I can't wait to show everyone my model Liz running around doing squats and jumping jacks and push-ups at 73 years old, and she's not an anomaly. She's just taken care of herself and made it a priority to be fit and eat well. So absolutely not. Age has nothing to do with it. It's all about how you take care of yourself.
No, I agree. One of the things we actually on our website, we actually have a article. One of our blog articles is about when you're on a cell phone and how to have proper posture if you're looking at your cell phone or you're texting, because when you talked about the younger population having these issues, it's the younger population who is getting lower neck degeneration. And so we see that a lot. They just get chronic neck pain, and they don't know why. But, here they are texting hours a day and, flipping through Facebook. And, I find that kids anymore typically have smartphones at a really young age. I didn't have I had a flip phone at 17, So, kids are getting smartphones at a really young age, and they're spending a lot of time on it. And I think probably uncontrolled amount of time that their parents aren't aware of, but it's causing a lot of issues for them. So at a very young age, it's it's driving that degenerative process, which is causing a whole bunch of biomechanical issues. Because, when you were talking about rotator cuffs, and it's important to note that when somebody loses that proper posture, the biomechanics of the human body do not work like they're supposed to. The shoulders,
Yes.
the scapula, they don't glide like they're supposed to. You were talking about the shoulders becoming rounded. All of these things, the bones up in the shoulders, the clavicle, the scapula, they are all meant to work a certain way when in a certain position. But when the shoulders are rounded and you no longer have that proper positioning, they aren't designed to work anymore. And so people come in and they have all these concerns. They come to you with these concerns as well. And when they do that, it's you got to straighten up. You have to straighten up. Otherwise, in many times, like you had mentioned, if somebody has the unfortunate experience of walking into the wrong office or healthcare practitioner office, they might be just doing surgery on that shoulder, and it could be a simple biomechanical issue where you're just working with them to straighten up.
You're 100% right, and this is my own statistic. I'm not citing anything. This is my own experience. But in 19 out of 20 people I work with, and I've worked with over 1,000 clients resolving different types of chronic pain that were all based in biomechanical issues. 19 out of 20 of them, it was just a poor postural alignment, poor static movement. Their bodies had been malaligned from spending many hours sitting, not realizing they're in poor posture. They don't know what good posture even feels like, and all these issues coming from it. And actually, I was laughing when you brought up the thing about children and their necks. They've coined a phrase for it now. It's called tech neck. This forward head, rounding that cervical spine, which actually straightens it out, causes all these issues. But people don't realize what poor posture actually causes. Now, I like to use an analogy of a car to make this easier to understand. Now, if you have a vehicle and the vehicle has poor alignment, just like the alignment of your body, if you have this poor alignment, you're driving your vehicle or using your body, those tires are going to wear down quickly and unevenly, correct? So the tires are just like the joints. It's the moving part of the car, just like the joints in your body. Now, if you replace that bad tire with a new tire, are you really fixing the problem, or are you just kind of masking it the way a surgery would? If you don't actually fundamentally fix the alignment of that car, you're just going to wear that new tire right back down. And the same exact thing happens with the human body. Let's say someone's, I'll give an example of a knee. I see this all the time. People have knee pain and like, well, the cartilage is worn down, I need surgery. But when they squat down, their feet turn out, their knees knock together. They are no longer using their glutes when they squat. They are using all adductors and hip flexion and quadriceps to do their squat, placing tremendous amounts of stress on the knees, completely misaligning how the joint is supposed to function, rather than putting the weight load on the hips themselves, and causing these problems. And it's a simple mobilization and stretching of those, the muscles in the inner thigh, those adductors, the hip flexion muscles, and the quadricep muscles can make a huge change in knee pain within a matter of a week or two. So it's just people aren't privy to this information the way they should be.
Right.
And don't realize, because they go into their physician who is not, and once again, I'm not going to step out and say this is all of them, but not all of them are trained to look at injuries this way. They are taught to assess and diagnose the site of pain. But you and I both know that the site of pain and the source of pain are two different things.
Absolutely. So when you talk about aging gracefully, then, that's one of the things that you discuss quite a bit then, is it really relates back to posture again. Is that what I'm understanding? I
feel in my experiences that posture is one of the key aspects of maintaining good health, because I find that while eating good eating healthy is extremely important. If your body hurts, if your joints hurt, and you become you lack mobility, you're not moving around as much, that sedentary lifestyle tends to be a snowball effect of other problems. You start making worse choices. The active mobile person is also seems to make better choices. I can't speak to the psychology of that, but it seems to be a snowball effect. So I've based a lot of my lifestyle alterations in focusing on posture so that this person can feel really good. Because when they feel really good, their back doesn't hurt anymore, their knees don't hurt, their shoulders aren't giving them pain, they aren't getting chronic headaches. Well, then it's easier to when your head hurts, you're gonna go for a comfort food because you're just in pain, you don't care. Or when your back hurts and you can't move around, you tend to go for like, oh man, I don't feel like moving around right now, and I want something that's gonna make me feel good right here, right now. And what's that gonna be? A bad choice in food. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I think it's so key to figure out a little bit about how your posture needs to be aligned, and take 5 minutes every day just to do some gentle stretching and mobilizing of the body to feel better. Now, if you don't understand how the body works and the mechanical function, get a little guidance on it, because it'll make your efforts significantly better and more productive than if you just start doing yoga when your body's all messed up anyway. You're not going to move well as it is.
Yeah, and what we can do actually is there's a couple things we'll do for this episode. We'll make sure that we post a couple different exercises. We'll post a link, a couple exercises to help with posture. We'll post that in the show notes. We'll also make sure we post a link to Brendan's posture PT, so that you can check that out as well. And then we can also link up some of the other blog articles that I've done on proper posture. So that way you have a lot of resources beyond this episode to help you out, because I think that it's a big deal for a lot of people. And I think that it's not just something that you fix and you walk away and you spent a day doing it and then you walk away and everything's good. It's something that like you have to put in front of you every single day in order to help you. If you're working and you have a desk job, you got to have that in front of you every day in order to make sure that you're not just falling into this slumpville and your shoulders are rounded and because what happens is after you sit at your desk, I'm sure that for most people who are trying to pay attention to their posture, they start off with this great straight posture, and then from there it just slowly falls to pieces, and they get more and more into what they're doing, and next thing you know they're hunched over and they're destroying their back, their spine, their shoulders, and everything else. So we'll post all that stuff in the show notes. Now, the next topic I want to ask you about quickly, because it seems to be a topic that a lot of people are really interested in, and that is the topic of meditation. What do you have to say, and what are your thoughts on meditation?
I could spend an entire hour on this, but I won't. For this, it's one of the most. I've derived more benefit from meditation than almost anything else I've done. Exercise has been a wonderful part of my life from an early age. But meditation has yielded so many other benefits that you can't speak about them as much because they sound outlandish until when you have them yourself, you're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. But from a purely scientific standpoint, I'll go into some experiential, but from a scientific standpoint, there's research to show, like I said earlier, that meditation is one of the actions or vehicles that can stimulate that feel-good neurochemical dopamine, the same chemical that if you did a very strong stimulant, your body would experience, and open the receptors that it acts upon so that it never gets downregulated. You always feel good from it. The next thing scientifically that's supported is that there was a study at the University of Coimbatore in India done with a particular meditation called Shambhavi. It was conducted by the Isha Yoga Institute over there in India. And participants who were practicing this particular practice of Shambhavi, it's a 21-minute meditation. I actually do it myself. we're experiencing about 20% activation of their brain as opposed to the average 10% psychologists estimate. So they were almost doubling current brain capacity. But it wasn't just in modes of thinking or cognition. Areas of emotional centers and other centers of the brain were lighting up more. Areas that are responsible for fear or some of the negative. I can't speak exactly on the anatomy of the brain, but it was showing that certain areas lost density that were more responsible for negative types of emotions and actions, and areas that we want gray matter increased in density. So it literally changes the physiology of the brain to make you less emotionally reactive, to make you more joyful for no particular reason. And that's the scientific side of it. In my own experiences, what it starts to do is reduce your reactivity to situations around you. And most people don't realize how reactive they are. For instance, something happens to you and it invokes an emotion, right? And then you act upon that emotion. But to put this in logical terms, if I was to come up and call you, insult you, and say some name to you, and then you in turn got mad, isn't that like a certain form of control that I have over you? If I can say something and create an emotional response, a chemical response within your body, right, I have a certain level of control over you. And I have found the practice of meditation breaks that, where situations externally start to become separate from your internal situation, and you start to realize that this internal situation is actually 100% up to you. And it's a great intellectual realization, but the experiential part that comes with practice and over time is just such an amazing benefit. So when I walk into as an entrepreneur having started a business, I'm sure you've heard the term before, the entrepreneurial roller coaster. Some days it's amazing and you're like, there's no other life for me. And other days you're like, my gosh, why don't I just go get a job like everyone else and not have to worry about all this stuff and clock out and be done with it?
Yep.
You have those. And this has been a very potent tool for me to keep my head on straight when things get tough. And also when things get good, not to become, overly confident or too joyful that I make brash decisions. So it really helps you see just what you need to see. And I'll speak to actually a business partner of mine who has participated in meditation. One thing that makes him so successful in his business is when situations come up, good or bad, he doesn't react to the situation. He looks at the situation extremely objectively, able to remove his own emotions, even though it is his business, and come up with the best solution possible. And I think one of the most powerful tools to achieve that ability is to be able to just see a problem for what it is and handle it the best way possible, is to keep those emotions in check. And meditation is the tool to do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I feel that a lot of people don't really understand emotions. There's some people who are just like literally driven by every emotion that comes to them. If it's anger, if it's happiness, if it's frustration, they're just literally every decision they make, they're driven based on that emotion. Where it was funny that this all came up because I was having a conversation recently, and I had told somebody, I said, I don't think that. I said, for me, emotions are just things. I look at them. I observe, what they are. I kind of analyze them, and then I sit there and think about what to do about it. But I don't, emotionally react to pretty much anything. I look at emotions as things, and like things that you can, look at them and analyze them and have a little bit of fun with them and understand them for what they are, and then react accordingly. But no, not just, and I understand how you're saying meditation actually helps you step back from that and look at everything in life from a different perspective, because you have more calmness of mind, or more peace of mind, I guess. Is that kind of where you're going with it?
Yeah, definitely that. And I also want to emphasize to people listening, when you say that you're not reactive to emotion, people are like, well, they're emotionless. That's not a good thing. And that's not what it is. It's more
No.
so the ability to feel these things. So you can enjoy them, but they rather than dictating your actions, they just become part of the experience, but they don't decide how you act. And it's like putting flavor on your food. It makes the experiences more juicy. It makes them more flavorful. But once again, it's not going to influence the ultimate decision that you make. You can now just enjoy the emotions and see the relevance of them. Because let's be honest, if you truly look at emotional responses, emotions have all kinds of influences. It has, your upbringing, your education, your religious belief, your culture. All these things can dictate the way you view, perceive, and therefore reaction or emotionally react to situations around you. But does that make your emotional response the correct emotional response or a relevant one? Are your emotions truly relevant to the situation around you, or is it just how you feel? You don't have an omniscient perspective on the situation. So are they really to your benefit, or should they be just more enjoyable? Like, hey, I can feel these things. It's a good feeling, or oh, it's a bad feeling, and it helps you define good situations versus bad ones. But we shouldn't necessarily react to those feelings because they're not necessarily a good guiding tool as to proper decision making. We know highly emotional people don't often make great decisions.
Right, exactly. That doesn't mean you're an insensitive jerk. That's not what that means at all. Like you said, the way I look at, things that happen, let's say, for instance, a car accident, right? In most people's mind, that's a terrible thing. However, it's really the emotion you attach to it, so, no matter what that thing is that happens, it's just a thing. You can either put a positive emotion to it or a negative emotion. You could take that car accident. You could say, well, I learned not to do this, and now that I know that what I did wasn't an intelligent thing, I can tell other people and I can help them so they can avoid the situation I was in. Or you can look at it as in, oh, that moron who hit me and blank this and blank that. There's two ways you can look at any situation. So it's really, things happen, you can attach a positive or a negative meaning to it, and then that emotion is up to you to decide. And you know what, the way I look at it is that things are going to happen all day long, so you can decide whether you want to be really happy or really miserable. And so those emotions that you're going to use, it's really up to you.
You're 100% right. And now let's look at just what's most beneficial. Rather than how somebody feels, what's the most beneficial way to react to a situation? Is it to yell and scream and blame the other driver and all that? Or is it to say, all right, what went wrong in that situation? What could I have done to prevent it, make it better? What can I take away from this situation and give to others to make sure they don't experience it? And how am I going to not experience this in the future? And what you're basically, the way you're talking sounds a lot like stoicism, and which I think is a wonderful tool that people can apply on a daily basis. I don't know, do you ascribe to any stoicism or read anything of those teachings at all?
No, not really. I don't. No.
Well, you sound just like one. It's the basic idea is that there are just situations, not good or bad, because that is our own creation, this good or bad
Okay.
perspective, that there are just situations. Now, a situation has two given outcomes. Either it is a situation that perpetuates your actions, it promotes your actions and pushes what you're trying to do forward, or it impedes your actions, or it somehow it's a negative towards what you're ultimately trying to do with your life. But in turn, it's a learning opportunity. It's a chance to essentially sharpen the axe. To give you an example of this, a famous Stoic was Thomas Edison. One night he had come home from work with his son, and they lived in a small town, and I'm trying to quote the story as best as possible. I might slip up a little bit, but the local insurance guy comes running over and is pounding on the door and says, "You got to come outside. Your place is on fire." So they run down, and he looks at his factory, and it's burning all these different colors because there's all these chemicals inside of it. And the irony of the situation is he did not insure for fire because the building was supposed to be fireproof as it's burning down. So he turns to his son, and at this time, the the media has already shown up and everyone already knows about it. And he turns to his son and he says, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see such a grand fire again." And people were shocked at his reaction. And they go, "How are you not losing your mind right now?" And he said, "I faced many difficult situations in my life before like this. And I find these are the situations that drive a man, that awaken a man. Otherwise, if things go too well for too long, you settle for ennui, or basically you become comfortable and complacent. You're not driven to constantly improve." And the funny thing is they had been doing about $1 million in revenue out of that factory. He got the place up to about 50% capacity in 3 weeks, and in 6 weeks they were at 100% capacity again. And that year they did $10 million in revenue. So he came back reinvigorated by facing a challenge, getting better, overcoming it, and continuing on his path. And an amazing resource to bring this into modern perspective is a book by Ryan Holiday called "The Obstacle is the Way," that takes ancient Stoicism like Marcus Aurelius and some of those Stoics out of the Greek era and brings it with a modern touch. And I think it's just a wonderful perspective. And basically, that's what you're describing right now without even knowing it, it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, it's awesome. And thanks for sharing that story. That was really, that was a good story. I liked it. Well, Brendan, it's been incredible having you on the show. It was, your wealth of knowledge, and not only I, but the listeners also appreciate you coming on and sharing that information with us. How are a couple ways people can get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you?
So we are about to launch a podcast in the next few days called thepreventativepodcast.com. You'll be able to log on to that site, and we'll have various resources of information available, as well as my contact. If you want to get a hold of me right here, right now, I'm happy to give out my email address, which you can put in the show notes. I'll share with that later on so that people don't have to remember it while they're driving.
Awesome.
And I do offer, consultations one-on-one if people are interested in assessing their chronic pain and things like that. So all these things you can check out. And I want to remind everybody to jump on the show notes after this to check out all your posture articles, because I can't tell you how many people's lives have changed by learning a very simple techniques to change their posture, and how much it reduces pain and changes hormones and breathing, and therefore oxygen in the body, so your energy gets improved, your outlook gets improved, all these things. So check out the show notes just for that, if nothing else, and it'll really be helpful to you. So check us out at preventativepodcast.com, or find us at confidentposture.com to take a look at our product, Posture PT, as well.
Cool, Brendan. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing that information with you, and maybe we'll have to have you back on one day.
Absolutely. That was lots of fun. I appreciate it.
All right, you bet. Well, take care, buddy.
If you want more information to multiply your health and simplify your lifestyle, visit our website at excelpodcast.com. Until next time, have an outstanding day.